Joe, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm going to stick with the American accent.
It's probably a good play. So we hear there is we mentioned this in our teaser leading into the show, but a former bar that has been turned into a Catholic church in a small town in Utah. Maybe tell us a little bit about that.
That's right. So, this comes out of our deep conviction at Catholic Extension with the many churches that we work with, that sometimes the simplest places are the most sacred. Think about Bethlehem, a very, very simple place in which something very, very sacred is happening. And so this church in Utah, a little town called Beryl Junction, that you would very much miss if you were driving past it. There's a church there, and it's a very, very faithful community of people. It used to be a bar. It used to be a former general store. They have been in it now for the last several years, and this is their church. And visiting this place, it's an extraordinarily sacred place, filled with people who are filled with faith, do not take the church's presence for granted, and are thrilled to have just this very simple place where they can come together and be a church. And this is one of the thousands of communities that Catholic Extension is supporting throughout the country, and Beryl Junction is one of those places.
So, Joe, with the photos you provided, we can see how the San Pablo Mission has repurposed this space to fit their needs. But in general, what are the challenges that small communities like this face in the pursuit of practicing their Catholic faith, living their Catholic faith, having a place for worship, etc.?
Well, this community has the classic trifecta of challenges that we often encounter in the communities that we work with. And the first one is just simply distance. It's hundreds of miles to the next church. Many of the parishioners themselves have to travel many miles to come to church. The priest isn't necessarily a residential priest. He must drive there. And so distance is a big challenge for these communities. The second challenge that they really face is resources. I mean, these are communities built of people who are agricultural workers, and so they don't necessarily have, a lot of financial resources. But what they lack in financial resources, they often make up in faith and in creativity, and so we see that very strongly in this community in Beryl Junction. And then the third challenge that they face, and we often encounter in communities that we work with, is that Catholics are a minority in this community. So Mormonism is the predominant faith group in Utah, and so Catholics are just a very small percentage of the overall population, and so they have this saying that there's no such thing as an accidental Catholic in Utah, because they are a minority, and they know that if they're going to have a church and have their faith and pass it on to their children, they need to be very, very intentional about that, and that's what we find in communities like these.
And you mentioned the distance too. Maybe can you talk about, I believe Father Dave Bittman, who's there, who travels an incredible distance, I understand, to celebrate Mass for the San Pablo Mission.
He is, and his experience of the distances that he has to travel is very typical of priests who serve out in the missions. And these are priests that we support, including Father David Bittman. And his missionary circuit is that he has to go out to, I think it's 3 different churches, and including San Pablo, and it's a distance of about 200 to 300 miles that he has to travel in order to hit all of them. And then when he gets to these places, there's not necessarily a place for him to sleep. Sometimes in these churches they don't have a rectory; they might have cot in the back. I went to one community where they didn't even have a bathroom for the local priest. And so they have to get creative and figure things out. But certainly these priests are on the road a lot. And they're really heroic gentlemen who are out there understanding that they're there bringing the sacraments to a people who are very, very hungry for them. I did a little bit of research, and I found that Father David Bittman's journey for a New Englander would be the equivalent of a priest based in Boston going out and celebrating Mass in Burlington, Vermont. So if you can kind of just picture that distance, that's what this priest and priests like him are facing out.
That's a long ride, Joe. That's a long ride. I've said before, I am so grateful, I always will be, to Catholic Extension for giving me the chance to go with a group of priests to the Mexican-United States border and experience firsthand how people are living there and the challenges that people face. But I know from that experience that Catholic Extension stays with people, sticks with the community. So how can Catholic Extension help this community to build a newer, bigger church to accommodate all these people that are coming from everywhere?
Yeah, and their reality, their challenges, but also their opportunities mirror what we experience in communities throughout the country, and that is that this is a community where its people are very faithful, where they're very young, and where they're a growing community. And so one of the things Catholic Extension does, in addition to helping support these priests who go out to these communities, is actually physically help build and repair new churches. So this community out in Beryl Junction has been saving their pennies for years and years and years, and they're actually right now at the moment where they're trying to build a new proper church, one that's not a former bar or former general store. And they're absolutely thrilled about it, and they're absolutely going to fill this place. And Catholic Extension will be working with them to help support the building of the repair of this new church. This new church that they're going to build at San Pablo and Beryl Junction will be, in addition to the 13,000 churches that Catholic Extension has already built and repaired in our history since 1905. So it continues that long legacy, and that's one of the ways that we journey with people, is not only help build up the church with leaders and ministries, but also literally and physically help build up the presence of the church. And that's what we're going to do next in Beryl Junction, Utah.
And that's great. Joe, thank you so much for being with us. We get a little taste of some of the video and some of the pictures that we have. It's amazing. The amazing work that Catholic Extension does. And we thank you for being with us and sharing this today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Hey,
Thanks.
Joe, before you go, how can people support the work and get the magazine?
Please go to our website, catholicextension.org. Again, that's catholicextension.org. You can read about some of these stories right there on the website. You can also request a copy of Extension Magazine, where we tell stories about many communities across the country.
Outstanding. Well, thanks again. Have
Thanks,
a great
Joe.
week.
Thank you.
Okay, God bless.